Hi. We at jSonar are about ready to release 4.2, and I thought I'd walk you through some of the main themes in 4.2. I'm not going to go into too much detail since this is meant to be a brief and quick video. So just touch upon two or three of the main themes, and really what 4.2 is a significant extension to the jSonar platform for database security. Um, we've put a lot of effort into even further extending beyond the platforms that were supported in 4.0 and 4.1. We added many cloud databases, a lot of the big data systems with native interfacing. So really providing well beyond what you can capture through database activity monitoring tools like Improve and Guardium to anything, any data repository really that exists. We've gotten to a point that we can onboard a new platform in less than 2 weeks, and we've crossed the 60 database supported database mark. Um, the other thing that we did in 4.2 is we started extending beyond just the monitoring and auditing and security into new areas that I'll talk about. Specifically, one of the big ones is sensitive data management, which is something we added in 4.2 that we think is very significant because we see all our customers struggling with classification projects, defining where the sensitive data is. We continue to invest a lot in what we call self-service or universal access, being able to let the security professional remain within their tool of choice. We've enhanced support what you can do with SQL access and scikit access and R access, but probably the biggest enhancement we did was to the jSonar app for Splunk. So I'll mention that and I'll show you what that means. But really, what it entails is we continue to invest in the ability to just use the Splunk GUI in order to look at any data such as threats and outliers directly from within Splunk, even though they haven't been fed into Splunk. What we did was two things. First, we enabled Splunk Cloud. So now if you're a Splunk Cloud customer, you can use the JSONR add-on. But the other thing is we made it a bidirectional interface. So not only can you view data, you can even run APIs or actions or playbooks that are all performed within the JSONR application, and I'll show you that as well. So let's talk a little bit about SDM. SDM is an application that we added into 4.2. And what we consistently heard from all our customers who've been trying to use other scanners and other SDM systems for doing classification is that it's just too hard. There are a lot of false positives, and there just are a lot of results, and the manual work in order to sift through these things is impossible. Um, and therefore the projects take months and months and months, and once you're finished you have to do it again because every 6 to 9 months you have to rescan and see what's new. um, and so they asked us to invest in automation and in machine learning in order to be able to do this more effectively. um, we automate the entire life cycle from discovery of the issue to remediation of the issue to rechecking the issue. And I'll show you this with a few examples, but that's a big focus of 4.2. And so if you have a manual process such as this, where you find something, you email it to someone, you have to manage spreadsheets, all this can go away and be fully automated by the jSonar system. And we also do this on a very wide variety of platforms. So it could be cloud databases, it could be native databases, on-prem databases, it could be not even databases. And some of the scanning is done by the jSonar scanners. But if you already have existing scanners that know how to go out and tell you where sensitive data is, it's perfectly fine. You can feed that data into jSonar and manage the remediation process, the false positive process within jSonar, because really that's where the difficulty is. It's not about scanning. Scanning is easy. It's about handling the data. And so we built the application in a way that it can use our scanners, but also use anybody else's scanners. And the key really is automation. The automation is something that we rely both on the workflow process, the Justify application for automating and routing things between people, but we also, the other piece of automation is a patent pending set of algorithms that we call Learn From Me, and I'll explain in a sec. The idea is that as you're classifying things, as you're tagging things, as you're saying this is a false positive or this needs to be handled, you tell the system to record what you're doing, and in that process, you're letting the system learn from you. So then the system can mimic the things that you have done in the first place. And therefore, it could be that the first time that you're doing something, there's more manual work. But the next time that you have to tag things or decide what is a false positive, the system has already learned from you by observing you what you've done, and therefore can apply those actions directly. And that's pretty cool. And therefore, there's this iterative model creation process where the more the system learns from you, the better it is in terms of labeling and tagging and ignoring. And so over time, this becomes zero work for you. Um, the the second probably biggest thing in 4.2 is playbooks. We started this in 4.1, but in 4.2 we made a huge leap. We have an action catalog of integrations. There are over 2,000 integrations in the system. Everything you can think of, from cloud APIs to other security tooling, and everything underlying the jSonar platform in terms of what it's doing is now structured as a playbook, and it's like assembling things, and therefore it's very flexible, and you can do almost anything with this system now. So you can customize things to your requirements without asking jSonar for anything, without asking for code changes. You can integrate with your other security tooling or even non-security tooling. Like, for example, you want to post something into Slack or do something on GitHub because of some outlier that was detected. That's just an API call, which you can assemble through the playbooks. And for example, all of the SDM functionality is all built on top of playbooks, and I'll show you what that looks like. So let's stop here for a second. I'll show you some of the things that what it looks like in the system. Do this really quickly. So on the SDM side, there's a new application here called Sensitive Data Management, and there are different pieces to this. There's the first thing that happens is there are scans that occur. Those scans can happen within the tool, within the jSonar scanner, or outside the scanner. And then the answers come back, and they get presented to whoever is managing the project for sensitive data, and they get presented with all the findings or the hits for things. So if I scroll down here, I'll see what that thing looks like. So for example, um, what is the data path? So this is in a Snowflake database, in the test schema, in the address table, in the street address column, there is something that was flagged using the US address detector, which looks for US addresses. So these are detectors, and detectors are grouped into labels. So for example, location information could be a bunch of detectors, could be a US address, a European address, whatever. And then it tells you how many rows were scanned, how many matches, and therefore how much percentage, what percentage of the data was found to be sensitive. You have a different view up here, which is more of a, um, let me expand this for a second, which is more of an asset view or viewing things on the entire database. So for example, on this MariaDB database, there were hits of sensitive data for 4 labels. RON PII, financial information, user personal information, bank cards, um, I, you know, I can see exactly which tables were hit. So instead of seeing this one line at a time, I can get a grouping based on the entire asset. And then I can drill down here and see exactly what the hits were for sensitive data. So it'll tell me which column had it exactly, what the label was, what regular expression matched it if it's a regular expression, and what percentage were sensitive. So it's very easy to see exactly what's going on. And then, so for example, it could be that at this point, this is what the scanner is saying. It doesn't mean that it's absolutely correct. So for example, if I say that I want to start working on the data that I found in my MongoDB database, the first thing that I might want to be able to do is just verify that this is correct, right? So, okay, the system is saying that in the card number collection, there are MasterCards. But yeah, maybe yes, maybe no. One of the things that in a project I need to do is I need to verify that's true. So instead of taking everything manually and sending it back and having somebody validate it, I can do this directly from here. I can say that I want to show the data because the system in itself is not, when it does a scan, it's not going to store the card numbers inside the jSonar system because we don't want to create another point of sensitive data storage. So, however, the scanner did have uh, the ability to scan and look into the table, which means that we can check out the password again from the password vault and say, so I want to validate and submit it. And what's happening now is that there's a playbook that's running. In this case, the playbook is running um, using you can see here, it's a successfully executed action show data. Um, so it's activated a playbook. That playbook could be something within the jSonar system, or it could be something within outside of the jSonar system, like another scanner. But right now, it brought back um, the actual data in the database that created that flag. So at that point, I can, I've saved myself all this work of going, connecting to the database, etc. And then I can decide what I want to do. I can say, okay, I want to apply an action to it, and in the action, I can either tag it. So I'm saying yes, this is sensitive data, or I can ignore it if it's a false positive, or for that matter, I can say that I want to remediate it. If I say that I want to remediate it, what I'm saying is usually somebody needs to remediate this. Who is responsible for remediation? By when they need to remediate it. So maybe they need to remediate it within 6 months. And then I can say, okay, do I want to automatically schedule a scan? Okay, maybe the scan is going to happen after 200 days. So within 6 months, it has to be remediated. 20 days after that, I'm going to rescan and validate. So again, the whole idea is to automate the whole thing as opposed to remember that I need to rescan this, etc., etc. And it will reopen it if it needs to, um, etc. And all of these things that I am doing, I can also teach. Teach a system. I can say something like learn from me, and you can see that it's now recording my actions. So now as I go and say, I want to ignore this, or I want to remediate this, what the system is going to do is learn from me, how am I looking at the data? How am I filtering the data? How do I decide what to take action on? It'll store all this as a bunch of what we call recorded actions. And then it will analyze those recorded actions in order to create a replay set. And then when new data comes in later from other sources, other databases, etc., it will look for things that it already knows how to do without asking you. So that's what this recorded actions are. Now I mentioned playbooks, so I mentioned before that everything is based on a playbooks, and you can look at this even here, like the show data playbook did this. Okay, it went, it decided is it a SQL or no SQL database. Um, in this case, it went down this path. It connected to the Mongo database. It brought back the activity. Sometimes these could be very, very complex, like a remediation playbook um, is something that creates a workflow ticket and then creates a scan and then schedules a scan for 200 days from now, et cetera, et cetera. This is the playbook system in 4.2. There's three important facets to this. First of all, there are a lot of pre-built playbooks in the system, everything from discovery of assets, like discovery of new RDS databases, importing of assets from CMDB, um, audit playbooks like turn on audit, uh, turn on native audit in databases, check that the audits definitions haven't changed. These are all playbooks. Everything is a playbook in the system now. So that's one aspect of this. The second aspect is the action catalog is extremely robust. So if I look at what a playbook is, it's really a set of actions. You see each one of these is an action that are connected together, usually passing some parameters from one to another. And if I want to add a new integration into a playbook, a new action, what I get is the action catalog. And the action catalog includes all of the APIs that exist within the jSonar system. So for example, if I want to, um, I want to SSH somewhere and call something through SSH. There's an API for that. If I want to interface with the system itself, there's an API for this. If I want to send an email, there's an API for this. If I want to get a list, like a set of group members or a set of things from CMDB which were imported into the system, or I want to connect to Amazon, there's a whole bunch of APIs on the jSonar side, and each one of these is, so what does an API look like? An API is something that has a set of parameters. So if I want to send an email, there's a subject, there's a who it gets sent to, there's a body, etc. But this is just jSonar APIs. That's just a small piece. If I start scrolling down, you'll see that we've brought in everything, all APIs that have to do with the cloud, Azure, AWS, Google, plus everything, all kinds of other systems, BigFix, Blue Coat, Carbon Black, Checkpoint, everything, all APIs exist in the system, and therefore if you want to start integrating and calling something that something happens and is identified, say the threat within the jSonar system, you want to do something on another system, you want to either inform the other system or anything like that, you can do that. CyberArk APIs, everything is in here, and you can search for things. So I can start from an integration. I can say, I want to say that I want to initiate a scan in some other system. So it'll bring me all the APIs that have to do with a scan. So there's scans you can do within jSonar, the SDM system, but there's also scans you can do with a Nessus system, for example, or Palo Alto systems. And so um, it's very simple, or a Qualys system. So all the APIs are there, and I can start connecting things together. Um, and what's really nice about playbooks and actions is that it also allowed us to make and I mentioned this before, make our Splunk interface better. So for example, if I go to my Splunk system, um, and here I have the Sonar add-on for Splunk. What the Sonar add-on for Splunk allows me to do, just like in previous versions, I could look at, remember we looked at the sensitive data um, that was being flagged from the scanners. Okay, so the same data appears also here. Okay, so I can look at the data from here. Remember I showed you before this is in the address table and the test schema in the Snowflake database. The detector was a US address, et cetera, et cetera. But more importantly, I can now, let's see, let me go to, let me pick this, the same thing I did before, which is my Mongo data. And so all this is kind of what we had before 4.2. What's really new here is, remember, in when I was over here in the sensitive data, when I was tagging and processing the data, I could invoke an action or a playbook. I can do this now directly from within Splunk. So here is the data. You can see that one of the thing that I have is this show data. Okay, and so I can go directly from here and say that I want to show the data that is behind this. Now I'm sitting within Splunk, but since there's now integration between the two, I can say, that I want to check if true. And it's calling the exact same playbook. It's calling the exact same API using a token, using single sign-on, and so I can stay within my Splunk app and yet get the responses out of the playbooks or initiate things from playbooks, all from within Splunk. So that's the other part that I mentioned in 4.2. And then back here, there's all kinds of other. The tag results is only one thing. There's an application for processing findings, which is after I tag things, after I verify, after I filter out all of the false positives, I can go into the system and see where is the sensitive data at a very high level. So here, what I'm getting is I'm getting the whatever this color is, these magenta circles are showing me the labels of the sensitive data, and the size of it indicate how many records of sensitive data exist, and the blues are the assets. So this is where the sensitive data resides, and of course I can filter it. I can see the statuses, how many remediations are needed, how many were already remediated, and the entire process happens in one place. Okay, and I can slice and dice by anything. So I can start by just databases and projects. Okay, so usually there's a project involved, and then I can say something like, let me add the tables to see where the data really resides, or I can say I don't want to do this by database, I want to do this by label. So any type of slicing and dicing, I can see. The last thing I wanted to mention with 4.2 is that we've as we've done more and more cloud deployments and very large cloud deployments, we found that there were improvements we can make to the gateways. The gateways are those components which tap into the cloud APIs and pull information from them. And usually what happens is you have to put a gateway in each cloud region. And so if a company has on-prem databases, but also AWS and Azure databases, there will be more than one gateway. There could be gateways on-prem. There could be gateways on each cloud. What we did in 4.2 is we made a much better communication layer between the different gateways and made it bidirectional so you can centrally view everything that's happening on all the gateways. And even though each of these gateways, this one and this one and this one, is managing a different set of assets, um, everything is viewable from a single place. All the stats, all of the statuses, all of the and each one of these can do its own discovery of new assets. So you can automate the whole thing and really manage a multi-cloud and an on-prem environment in a very simple way. That's also something that's pretty significant in 4.2. Beyond that, there are a whole bunch of things. If you look at the release notes, there's probably 200 new things. But I think these are worth mentioning. Software is now structured a bit differently than it was prior to 4.2, and primarily we did it to be able to support rehydration in cloud. So now the software is completely separate between where the software is, where the config is, where the data is. And so, for example, you can blow out the operating system every week and it won't affect the software at all because there's no dependencies and there's a separation between the read-only components, for example, the software, so you can mount a disk which is read-only, put all the software there, and then just have one volume for the data. So the structure of the software is kind of different. We added CRUD capabilities into Sonar K, so now you can add documents, edit documents on pretty much every collection, as long as you're allowed to do this. There's a list maker application which goes beyond just groups. So you can bring in data, say, from CMDB and then create a list of all the asset types from CMDB or all the assets themselves without writing any code, without doing any integration. Um, Authentication tokens are important. So um, an authentication token is something that allows you to run something within the system. For example, a playbook. Authentication tokens could be created by the administrator, and so you can have very granular control of who can do what, and the who in this case is not only a person but also a system. I mentioned many new sources like AWS Athena, CockroachDB, Percona, Teradata, and Telecloud. There's really a lot of new sources. A lot of new features in the gateway. For example, Splunk forwarding. Until now, some people still want to get all the raw data into Splunk. I'm not sure that's necessarily the best or the optimal way to do things, but until now, if you wanted to get the data into Splunk, the way you would do this, you would run the system into the jSonar system through the gateway, and then run a pipeline that would export the data into syslog and send it back into Splunk. What the gateway now can do is do a split before it even goes into the system. So it will put the system into jSonar and also forward it into Splunk. Just another way to do this. We've enhanced sharding on gateway to address cases where you have thousands of databases in the cloud and you want to shard it across a small number of gateways. We've added noise filtering. We've made it asset centric, so every time there's a record that gets stored, it already creates the asset for it. Um, and so everything in the system is now very asset centric. You never have these issues of, um, okay, if it's a cluster with multiple nodes, then you have to think of it as the physical nodes. No, in this case, it'll know that this is a single cluster with one asset. And we've even done this in a way that we could create a Guardium CMDB reconciliation application. So Guardium just tells you things like the IP address and the service name and maybe the database name, but that doesn't actually always map correctly um, into a CMDB asset. The CMDB picture of the world could be different from what the Guardium system is reporting. And what we've done is created an reconciliation application so that if you're getting data through Guardium or Imperva, we will do the reconciliation so that every record that you look at already tells you what the asset is from a CMDB perspective. We added array displays and actions for arrays in SonarK because very often the data looks like a bunch of objects in an array, and now you can operate on each one of these lines. We've improved self-auditing of the system, and we've improved the granular access control in SonarK so that just like in the past you could control exactly which report could be activated by which user. In this case, now every dashboard or even each widget in SonarK, you can provide um, a definition of who can use them. So this was a very, very, very fast and partial view of 4.2. Hope a lot of this are things that you've been waiting for. And for more information, visit jsonar.com. There are plenty more videos and um, and resources about 4.2 and everything else. Thanks. Bye.